She only said yes to the date because he reminded her of the husband she lost 5 years ago. It wasn't his smile or his voice. It was the way he held the door open like it was instinct. The way his laugh came a second late as if he didn't trust Joy to stay. She told herself it was a mistake, that she was chasing ghosts. But she let him buy her coffee anyway. He noticed the small scar on her wrist before she even spoke. "How'd that happen?" he asked, and her heart stuttered. Because her husband had been the only one who ever asked about it. She lied like always, but his eyes lingered too long like he already knew the truth. They met again, then again, and soon she stopped pretending she wasn't waiting for his texts. He told her things no one else could have known. How she hated being called baby. How she loved thunderstorms, but only if she was barefoot. How she once cried because the street violinist played the same song her husband used to hum. "You remind me of him," she whispered once, ashamed. "I know," he said softly, like it hurt him too. On their 5th date, she wore the dress she thought she'd never take out of the closet again. The one she wore the night her husband proposed. His eyes widened and his hands trembled as if he'd seen it before. "Where did you get that?" he asked, her breath caught. "It was my husband's favorite. Why?" His jaw tightened, and for a long time he said nothing. Then finally, "Because I bought it for you." She laughed, thinking he meant it as a compliment, but his expression didn't change. Her stomach dropped. "What are you saying?" He leaned closer, voice breaking. "It's me, I came back. Not all of me, not the way you remember, but enough, I found you." She wanted to run, to deny it, but his hand brushed hers and she felt it. That same electricity, the same impossible familiarity. Her husband was gone, and yet somehow, impossibly, he was here.
On a rainy Tuesday evening, the city buses were crowded. Windows fogged over. The air smelled of damp jackets and faint perfume. He sat near the middle, scrolling idly on his phone when she stepped on. Something about her made the noise of the bus recede. Her hair damp from the drizzle. Her gaze turned inward, the way she tucked a stray strand behind her ear before finding a seat across from him. He stole glances, heart quickening, but couldn't summon the courage to speak. At one point their eyes met, and she smiled, brief and soft, before looking back down at her book. The bus rattled, time slipped away, and before he knew it, she had pulled the cord and stood to leave. Their eyes met one more time, long enough for possibility to spark, too short for words. That night, restless and unable to shake her from his mind, he typed out a post on a local community group. "Saw a woman on the 47 bus around 6 p.m. today. Brown hair, green jacket, reading a novel. You smiled at me once. I should have said hello. If by some miracle you see this, I'd love to buy you a coffee." He hit post, half laughing at himself. It was a long shot, a whisper thrown into the crowded noise of the internet. 2 days later, another member of the group stumbled on his post. She had been scrolling aimlessly when something clicked in her memory. A different post, written by a woman. Curious, she searched it out again. "I saw a man on the bus Tuesday around 6. He was sitting across from me. I smiled, but I think I made him nervous. He looked kind. I regret not saying anything. If you're out there, maybe we'll cross paths again." The times matched, the descriptions matched. It was uncanny. The group members' hearts skipped. They might be writing about each other, so she messaged them both privately. "I think you're looking for each other. Here's the link to the other post. I'll let you take it from here." And just like that, she vanished back into the stream, leaving two strangers staring at their screens, realizing with disbelief that they had been thinking of the same fleeting moment. He reached out first. "I think you might be talking about me. Were you reading on the 47 Tuesday night?" Her reply came quickly. "And were you the man pretending not to stare at me but failing terribly?" He laughed aloud. From there, the messages flowed easily. What started with careful introductions soon gave way to jokes, shared music links, confessions of favorite foods, stories of childhood pets, little pieces of themselves unspooling into the light. The more they typed, the more they felt that the moment on the bus hadn't been an accident. It had been an opening. After a week, he asked, "Would you like to meet properly?" "This time not on a crowded bus?" she answered. "Yes, somewhere with coffee and no squeaky brakes." The day of their first date, he arrived 10 minutes early, nervous energy carrying him through the door of a small cafe. He chose a table by the window, his heart pounding at every sound of the bell above the door. And then she walked in, This time he didn't see her through a haze of fogged glass and fluorescent bus lights. He saw her in sunlight, hair falling in waves around her shoulders, eyes brighter than he remembered. She spotted him instantly, and her lips curved into the same smile that had haunted him since that rainy evening. She thought he looked different too, not hunched into a coat, not weary from the commute, but sitting tall, hopeful, his nervous grin spreading the moment he saw her. There was something boyish in his excitement, and something grounding in the way he stood to greet her. "Hi," he said, voice steadier than he expected. "Hi," she replied, warmth in her tone. They sat, ordered coffee, and conversation began as though they had known each other for years. They spoke of small things, how neither of them could cook rice properly, how they both hated the sound of alarm clocks. But beneath the laughter was a quiet awe, the realization that fate or coincidence or some mix of both had offered them a second chance at what could have been just a passing glance. As the afternoon slipped into evening, neither wanted to leave. They walked together afterward, the city buzzing around them, both a little astonished at how natural it felt to fall in step side by side. When they finally paused, reluctant to say goodbye, he said softly, "I'm really glad you posted that message." She looked up at him, her smile gentle and certain. "I'm glad you saw mine." For a moment they stood there, the air alive with all that was unsaid but understood. This wasn't the end of a story, but the beginning. And as they parted that night, her turning one way, him the other, both carried the same quiet excitement, the same unshakable certainty that the future held something bright. The bus had been just the first chapter. Everything else was still waiting to be written.
She answered the wrong number out of boredom. That's how it started. A voice she didn't recognize asked for someone named Mark, and she almost hung up, but something in the way he apologized, soft, careful, like he was afraid to bother her, made her stay. They talked for 3 minutes, then 15, then an hour. He said he was trying to reach a coworker but must have typed the number wrong. She laughed, called it fate, and he teased her for being too romantic. The next night, the number appeared again. "Oops, wrong number," he said with a grin in his voice, and somehow they ended up talking until sunrise. He never asked for photos, never pushed too far. Instead, he asked the questions no one else did anymore. What was the last thing that made her cry? What song did she secretly put on repeat? What was one memory she would never let fade? She told him about the scar on her wrist from when she fell skating at 12, about how she hated goodbyes but loved reunions, about how she sang to herself in the car when no one was watching. He told her he was a night owl, someone who collected fragments of people's stories because he believed that even strangers could change each other's lives. She started looking at her phone differently, like it was a thread to another world. Friends noticed she smiled more, but she kept him to herself, afraid that speaking of it would break the spell. One night she whispered, "I don't even know your name." He hesitated, then said, "Call me stranger. It suits me." She rolled her eyes, but secretly liked it. Weeks turned into months, and the sound of his voice was more familiar than her own. Finally, she admitted, "I need to see you. Just once. Otherwise, I'll always wonder if you're real." He was quiet for so long she thought he had hung up. Then came the reply, "Tomorrow. Central Station, 7 p.m. last bench." She barely slept. The next evening, she stood among the rush of commuters, heart pounding, clutching her phone like a secret. She sat where he told her, scanning faces, waiting. The minutes dragged on, 7, then 7:15, then 7:30. Doubt clawed at her. Maybe it had all been a cruel game. She pulled out her phone to send a final message, but before she typed, the screen lit up. "Look up." Her breath caught. Across the platform, just beyond the blur of strangers, he stood. Taller than she imagined, nervous, shifting from foot to foot, phone in his hand, eyes locked on hers. And then he smiled, the kind of smile that felt like coming home.